Parker Washington. That is the man of the day. That is the man that is all the talk, at least from training camp day 2, around your Jacksonville Jaguars. He absolutely stole the show there in Duval County, and we're going to talk about it on today's show in just terms of some quotes that we've been hearing from not only Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence, but also a couple of reporters in talking about Parker Washington. And I just kind of want to also give my thoughts in terms of where I think Parker Washington will be in this offense come the 2026 NFL season, and just my overall take on him just having an absolute day for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But guys, we are presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks. And if you want to help support the show, consider giving us a like, hit that subscribe button, turn on your notifications for all things Jacksonville Jaguars, as we've got you covered now that we're into training camp. We'll have you covered through that, the preseason, the regular season, and all throughout the calendar year surrounding your Jacksonville Jaguars. Consider hitting that subscribe button. All right, let's get into Parker Washington and his day. So I'm going to read just some quotes from a couple of people who cover the Jacksonville Jaguars that have boots on the ground. First, we'll start off with John Shipley. Mentioned him a couple times. He is a guy who does a great job covering the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had this to say per Sports Illustrated on Parker Washington. He said, the offense in general was much more explosive and efficient through the air than it was on day one. I completely agree with that. And Parker Washington helped lead that charge, In the Jaguars' early team drills and 7-on-7 reps, Washington was a tough cover for anyone Jaguar secondary put up against him. He got open over the middle of the field with relative ease, but his most impressive plays came on the sideline when it was clear he and Trevor Lawrence are in a great place in terms of chemistry. That is a sentence right there before I finish the rest of the quote that you love to hear, that they're in a great place in terms of chemistry, because that is so important in today's National Football League in terms of being on timing with your receiver and your quarterback, in terms of having that anticipatory kind of windows that you can operate in. Parker Washington and Trevor Lawrence seem to be in a great spot. Shipley continues. Lawrence has thrown to Washington longer than any other target at the top of the receiver depth chart, and it showed. Several of the Jaguars' pass catchers stood out as the passing game went downfield a bit, including Brian Thomas Jr. with a couple of chunk gains on the passes from Lawrence, but ultimately it was Washington who stood out and stole the show. Credit to John Shipley there. Travis Holmes also added this from Big Cat Country, saying on Parker Washington, the moment that stood out the most, this was talking about that pass earlier to Parker Washington, was a deep sideline route where Lawrence beat the coverage to the spot with an exceptional time throw, and Washington got both feet down inbounds in tight quarters. It was the kind of play that makes the extension conversation surrounding Washington feel like a formality. If there was an Offensive Player of the Day award for each day of training camp, Thursdays would go to Washington. And based on everything that I was reading just from the tweets, obviously I'm located here in Dallas, Texas at the Chat Sports headquarters, but it seems like in Jacksonville, Parker Washington really kind of stole the day. And it really shouldn't come to a surprise to anybody who has paid attention to the Jacksonville Jaguars over the years. It feels like every offseason, Parker Washington consistently puts in the work, consistently is a guy that gets in early, stays late, is willing to put in the extra time, and is certainly reaping the benefits of that hard work and that effort from his kind of preparation. And it wouldn't shock me if this is not multiple days in which Parker Washington kind of steals the show, because it really became apparent that back half of the year, which we've talked about numerous times, that Parker Washington was really the engine in terms of this offense being that kind of fire starter that really helped ignite things, not only just as a punt return and special teams, but as a receiver working in the slot, working in to get passes over the middle, and just be that consistent, reliable target that also could provide some explosion that Trevor Lawrence had as a reliable target last year. We'll talk about Liam Cohen's quote on Parker Washington here in just a moment that he mentioned from day one of training camp, along with Trevor Lawrence's comments. But I think if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, you've got to be absolutely thrilled with just the progress and the overall progression that Parker Washington has made. And we're going to talk about more in terms of where I think he could potentially end up in terms of where he finishes in the kind of wide receiver hierarchy for Jacksonville and just his overall production here in just a moment. But we would not be able to do today's show if it wasn't for our friends over at Prize Picks. Today's show is sponsored by Prize Picks, America's #1 sports picks app. Baseball is well underway, along with a ton of other sports that you can win with on Prize Picks. Football is right around the corner, guys, so make sure you're locked in with Prize Picks, as it is the best place to win cash while watching sports. The app is really easy to use. Just pick more or less on a few player stats and lock in your lineup. And you guys can even follow me on the app to see all my lineups at CullenBro21, including the season-long player lineup that you see on your screen. A little $20 to win $60 here on this two-player football season-long lineup. Emeka Buka, I think he's going to have the majority of the targets there in Tampa Bay, giving them more on his receiving yards. And Bashal Tutin, if you haven't got in on this already, he has been a standout for Jacksonville in this training camp period, along with Parker Washington. Give me the more on his rushing yards. And guys, PrizePicks has got a new user offer alert. Play your first $5 lineup and get $150 in lineups if you win that initial $5 lineup. Just use code HMA when you sign up. That's right. PrizePicks just switched up their offer, so there's no better time to join in. Lock in and win that first lineup. That's code HMA at sign up to get $150 in lineups if you win your first $5 lineup in bonus lineups. That is PrizePicks, code HMA. Download the app now. It is good to be right with our friends over at PrizePicks. Shout out to them for sponsoring this episode of Jags Now. So when you kind of think of just the overall takeaways from this offseason period, a lot of talk has been around Brian Thomas Jr., and I do think he's going to have a bounce-back season. And I was even having a discussion earlier today in the office with some of the guys that, like a lot of people, I will play fantasy football from time to time, and he was even asking, like, who do you think is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver one going into the season? And I kind of said at this current moment, if I had to pick one, it would be Parker Washington. That's not a slight at Brian Thomas Jr. I just think that there's just such a good rhythm that Washington has, not only with his coaching staff, but also Trevor Lawrence. And I just think the sky's the limit for Parker Washington. And if you don't believe me, we can talk about both Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence, who both talked about Parker Washington after the first day of training camp. And we'll start with head coach Liam Cohen and then get into Trevor Lawrence's quote. Liam Cohen had this to say about Parker Washington. If you look at him as a wideout on our team, Trevor's probably throwing to him and Strange the most. It's a pretty good sign if you ask me. Of guys that are on our roster currently, we're really confident in him and excited to see what he can do for us. Completely just, Liam Cohen kind of having to be the guy that you don't want to give too much away. But the fact that he even said that Trevor's probably throwing to him and Britton Strange the most shows that Trevor Lawrence has that kind of confidence in that trust in Parker Washington. Speaking of Lawrence, this is what he had to say on Parker Washington. Obviously, the yak he's able to create is impressive, but he's also is good enough down the field to where he's not just an underneath intermediate guy. He can run the whole route tree. I think that's what really makes him dangerous, is because he can go over the top too. But I would say, obviously, underneath, when he catches the ball and the ball is in his hands, there aren't many guys who can tackle him. And having that ability to have that yak ability and have that, make a guy miss and gain extra free yards for an offensive play and a drive over the course of a game, a quarter, a series, a season, whatever the case may be, that's so valuable. And that's so just invaluable to potentially replace on an offense. And I think Parker Washington does that as well as almost any other guy in the National Football League. He's certainly one of the top yak receivers in the National Football League, in my opinion. And, we've talked about it ad nauseum, right? Like, where's this offense going to look? We've talked about, the Jaguars wanting to have more of a downfield passing attack this upcoming season. Brian Thomas Jr. is obviously going to be a big part of that, and I would expect him to have a big year as well. Parker Washington is absolutely a guy that's also going to feature in this part of the offense, and I just can't wait to see what his year looks like, because he has just come so far from being a day 3 draft pick in the National Football League that probably was looked at when he was coming out as a guy that was going to contribute on special teams, and you would hope that he could give you something on offense. And he has turned himself into quite a player that, per Travis Holmes, who mentioned it, an extension's coming. I feel like if I had to guess, we're going to get an extension of some kind before the season starts. Now, obviously, things can change with that, and a guy like Antonio Johnson, they could also be potentially looking at extending him as well. And I don't know for a fact if they're going to extend Parker Washington, but if, shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks, if there was a more or less on over half a contract extension by Parker Washington before the start of the season, give me the more, man. I just think he's due. I think he's earned it. I think the way that the Jaguars talk about him, just from a character standpoint, the way he conducts himself on and off the football field, this isn't a shock to me that he stole the day on day 2 of training camp for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And it would not shock me if he is the guy leading this offense, along with obviously Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohen, Bashal Tutin, and the squad. But I really think he's going to have a great year, man. I really do. It wouldn't shock me if he has, he pushes not only over 1,000 yards, he could get over like 1,100 yards, and it wouldn't shock me. I think we're going to do at some point before the season starts some like bold predictions. You best believe that Parker Washington's going to be included on that. So just wanted to kind of hop on here and talk about Parker Washington because the dude just keeps balling, man. It's unbelievable that he's able to kind of produce it the way that he does. And I hope it continues for the Jaguars. And it's only going to lead, I think, in my opinion, to more success in 2026 for Jacksonville. Before we get out of here, guys, I just wanted to ask you, if you made it to the end of this video, that makes you a real one, and I truly appreciate it. But how many yards do you think Parker Washington will have this season? I'm saying it's going to be over 1,100 right now. I think I've said that on a previous video, and I'm still feeling confident in that. I think Brian Thomas Jr., there's a lot of wealth to go around in terms of the Jaguars receiving core and the potential targets that Trevor Lawrence could throw to. But I do think Parker Washington's going to lead the way. I want to know from you guys. Let me know down in the comment section below how many receiving yards you think Parker Washington will have this season. And that'll conclude today's episode of Jags Now, presented by our wonderful friends over at Prize Picks and powered by Chat Sports. Guys, keep us locked in. Hit that subscribe button for all things Jacksonville Jaguars. We've got you covered when training camp is now fully underway, and we've got you covered whenever preseason gets here, and of course when the regular season gets here. So make sure you subscribe, turn on your notifications, and until next time, guys, peace out, and we'll see you on the next one.